SG Reads.
Hello fellow travelers, my name is SG and welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about a theory that I've been thinking about for a while now, and that is the main protagonist of Into the Pit the Mimic? Let me explain. For a while now, people have theorized that the Mimic has been in the main series for as long as we've known, and for the most part that's true, and I'd like to believe that the books, the other games, even the movie have hinted at this happening in the past as we go along. In fact, we can see the influence of the Mimic from way back in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. But for right now, I want to talk about the Into the Pit and how it is told from the perspective of the Mimic himself. Now, are there ways to suggest this? Yes, there are. But before we get into it, I'd like to say please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. If you do think that I'm right, or if you want to talk about it, leave it down in the comment section. I'd like to hear your opinions. Or if you even think I'm just wrong and that this is no basis in this theory, I'd also like to hear it. Please leave it down in the comment section. I would definitely like to have a discussion about this, because it's just a very interesting concept in and of itself to me. Thanks again for watching, and let's continue, shall we? Now, it'll come to no surprise to anybody that Into the Pit is definitely one of the best titles to come out of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise so far, with a lot of fans agreeing that it's actually really good, and the alternate routes definitely do shine in certain ways. Allowing a difference in style, and both graphic and story-wise, does give it a new flair, a new vibe, and a refreshing new taste to the whole series or franchise as a whole. While at the same time it's not our traditional Five Nights at Freddy's game, we can count this as something that's either non-canon or canon depending on fan bases. But I will say for a fact, at least in my eyes, this is a canon event. This is something that's happening. While it may not be happening scene for scene, something tells me it is happening in a sort of way. Into the Pit is mainly about Oswald being left at a pizzeria while his dad goes to work at a convenience store, and going into the ball pit in an attempt to scare him for leaving him behind. Now, when he goes into the ball pit, we do find that he is sent through time at least 10-15 years before, where the pizzeria was Freddy Fazbear Pizza. And we do see Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, well, we're hinted at Foxy, we just don't see him, along with Chica, and of course, a golden Bonnie. From there, as soon as we enter into the main game of it all, we figure that Golden Bonnie has started to abduct children along with trying to catch you. But in the process, he ends up catching Oswald's dad, and ends up taking his place in the future of Oswald's dad as well. Now, Oswald has to convince his mom, or at least go and save his dad from the perils that are befalling him. That's about as much story as I'll give you, because I do think that there is going to be a lot of spoilers into this video, I suggest. So, if you haven't played the game or want to check it out, or if you have played the game and just don't care, please stick around. We're going to talk about a lot of things, spoil a lot of things, and give a new perspective on certain things. Now, it may seem odd, but the main thematic of the whole series, or of the whole game, seems to be relying on being somebody else. The whole idea of Spring Bonnie being his dad, disguised as dad, and people believing it's him, even though he does talk, have conversations along the way, does go throughout the series. In fact, we spent a whole 5 days with him, and no one really realizing that that's not Oswald's dad. And not only that, we do get several hints at the bad ends of Jeff being controlled by the Mimic, or at least by the Spring Bonnie, along with Oswald's really bad ending, where he becomes an animatronic. These all seem to be coinciding kind of themes. So that leads me to believe that the Spring Bonnie that we're following, the Springtrap, is a Mimic taking the form of Springtrap. There are a lot of things that support this, such as when he opens his mouth, it's all mechanical, and we know from the Five Nights at Freddy's 3, when we go to Fazbear Frights, or even just when we get jump scared by Spring Bonnie or Springtrap, we do see the skeleton, the decomposing face, or at least the eyes of William Afton coming out. So already that's vastly different than what we get here, suggesting that this isn't him. Otherwise, we would see him in the suit. It could be argued that we're seeing this through the eyes of Oswald, which is a child, and he's just terrified. But that doesn't feel like the case either, because as we noticed, he's not exactly acting like William Afton either. Springtrap is not acting the same as he has throughout the books, throughout the games, throughout the movie. He is acting more animalistic, more of an inside plan kind of guy. We all know William Afton is not one to go with plans for the long run. He'll take you, do what he does, and that'll be it. He's not going to keep you for long periods of time. Unless he steps you in an animatronic suit, but that's neither here nor there. That's not the style William Afton has shown us so far. From what we can gather is that this version of Spring Bonnie, or at least Springtrap, is more interested in studying these kids, studying Oswald's dad, studying Oswald himself, even willing to betray his own way of being, to portray himself as this version of Oswald's dad. Wanting to see how he lives, wanting to see what they do, their morning routine, and even willing to just sit there and eat breakfast with him. That in itself is odd, much like he's learning more than just trying to terrify him overall. And as I said before, in one of the endings, Jeff, we do know that if we do beat Springtrap, but leave him there, we do know that Jeff is attacked by this version of Springtrap and is ultimately taken over, making the pizzeria a success. Again, suggesting that he ran the pizzeria like a Fazbear Freddy location, suggesting that it became bigger and successful. Again, that just relies on him taking the place of Jeff. And then my final piece of evidence is suggesting that Oswald, at the very end of his bad end, is in fact becoming the Mimic. Mainly because at the end he's going through the pizzeria, he is being greeted by all these animatronics, Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and even Springtrap himself. And at the end his eyes start glowing, but the dialogue in itself is weird, because the name starts going away, as if he's forgetting what it is. He's also forgetting how to say things, or what he is. Even he's forgetting that he's even human to begin with, or even he was human. Why would that be a theme? Unless we were looking at a creature that all of a sudden woke up. He was suddenly a person. So that goes to show, for me at least, that Oswald, at the very end of his bad end, is the Mimic taking place of Oswald. While it's Oswald's bad end, this is in fact the Mimic's good end, or true end for him, suggesting that maybe he finally integrated himself with a human. He finally made himself the perfect vessel to hold himself. That's why all the animatronics, including Springtrap, are clapping for him, welcoming him, suggesting that he achieved something great. Not that they're welcoming him in, but rather they're happy to see him overall. And the fact that he's forgetting all his memories about the past week suggests that his memories are being wiped, as if he's becoming something different, a new creation altogether. Now, to help support this theory further, there is a minigame called To Be Pretty, where they do suggest that Baby, at least in the book world, was tricking another young girl into thinking that she could grant her her wish of being beautiful, but ultimately was just building her up to bring her down, both metaphorically and quite literally, ultimately taking her place as a regular person, or as her doppelganger, if you would, and living the rest of her life as she was before. Again, we get that idea of taking somebody else's life, mimicking them to the point of being a complete replica of the person. This is what we see in the game overall, and in the same kind of vein. But it also leads to kind of a darker theory that was that version of Baby, which wasn't exactly the Baby we knew, because she was longer, had longer neck, all these different features that don't exactly match the version we know. Was that just the Mimic copying a version that he remembered of her before the complete product was finished? So was that the Mimic also doing that to that girl as well? And if that's true, if this theory is true, then is this just the Mimic kind of reliving those memories in a sort of way? The other minigame, which doesn't really have anything about being somebody else, but I do feel has a very important, I guess, theme to it, is the Balloon Boy game, where you're popping balloons all over the place, and you do meet what looks like to be Purple Guy or William Afton, or if you go into the files, you will see kind of Henry waiting at the end of it all. It's weird because Balloon Boy has been hinted at a lot in the game series. We still don't really know his main objective or personality. In the novels, we do get this idea that maybe it's a whole tribe of Balloon Boys out there, have their own mindsets, their own village, living underground. But doesn't that sound familiar in a certain way? A creature living underground, living their own lives, or is possibly multiple people. Doesn't it sound kind of like the Mimic in a certain way? That might be a stretch, but to relate the Balloon Boy to the Mimic is definitely a possibility. One of the bigger mysteries of the Five Nights at Freddy's is Henry and Balloon Boy, because we don't really understand either one's motives or their ideas. Balloon Boy, we can kind of get this idea that he was supposed to be this mascot character, maybe to replace Freddy overall. I've always believed that maybe that William Afton, or maybe even Henry, I would like to believe Henry more than William, tried to turn the Balloon Boys, because they are based on different characters, is more like a Minions character. He was trying to replace the regular cast, or at least have them be the embodiment of children. This was the idea of the Balloon Boy, I believe, where he was supposed to be different characters representing different personalities, I suppose. Hence why we got BB and Dee Dee. We would have gotten more of like maybe CC, ZZ, stuff like that. We would have gotten characters like that along the way. I'm sure that may have been Henry's original intention. Also, the fact that they are clown-based was very interesting. Because like I said, we do feel that presence in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where we do meet the Balloon Boy. What is his method? Why is he here? We don't really know, other than the fact that he was a favorite creation, and does look very similar to different of animatronics of Henry's creation, such as the original animatronics that he built. And while some will say the circus animatronics are more related to William Afton because he was the one that built them, no, that's not true. We do know that William Afton may have gotten the remnants of the, I guess you could say, circus animatronics and modified them, adjust them to the way he wanted them, mainly because investors, along with his own ego, wanted to rebuild them in his own image or in a way that he could foresee using them. Hence, then we get Circus Baby after the closure of Fazbear Entertainment. We also know that Circus Baby was way older than most of the animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's due to the fact that Chica wasn't there or was a later addition to the main cast. So there again we have the clown aesthetic. Again, that does go back to the idea of the puppet originally. What was the puppet's purpose? To protect, of course. But we do know that the puppet himself was built by Henry in order to protect Charlie, specifically his daughter. So with all that being said, I would have to say that Henry is the one that falls back more on that clown aesthetic, more of the circus aesthetic, than William did. Because as we know, William was more intact with the idea of animal animatronics, such as his pride and joy was the Golden Bonnie suit. So for now, we're going to stick with the idea that the animatronics, the clown themes, were Henry's own idea above all else. Now you may be asking, why am I bringing all this up right now at this point in the story? That doesn't make sense. But that's because that's a major Easter egg in Into the Pit. Because if some of you remember, if you've read the Silver Eye series or even read the graphic novels, you will remember that there is a main part where they do see a picture of Charlie's dad with William Afton at the creation of Fazbear Restaurant Family Diner. And that being where William was wearing the Bonnie suit and her dad was wearing the Freddy suit. And we see that exact same picture in the game. Oscar finds it lying around and it is a collectible item to help complete for the whole 100% of the story. An odd throwaway joke in there overall. And you could even argue that it might not even be them. It's just the idea that two men taking a picture together seeming like they're in an office or that they are business partners in a certain way. Still, that's too much of a coincidence for it to be ignored overall. And again, that wouldn't make sense for it to be here specifically, considered that this is a whole separate state to where the original story takes place. I believe they said it was in Utah in this story, and we do know that it is existing in a whole separate state altogether. So why would this be here in a location that we're not even sure Michael or Henry or William and Henry have even been to, period? That means somebody had to have it with them. Someone needed a memory of something, of their original time. And let me ask you this. Who is taking the picture? That seems to be something no one really talks about. Someone had to be taking it. Was it just random? Was it just a random photographer along the way? No. It had to be somebody important. Something that hasn't been mentioned in the story at all. And has to be the main reason Henry himself considers this to be the infliction that happened to him first before anybody else. Thanks to the security breach Ruin, the DLC, we do know that Charlie, the incident with Charlie at least, was not the first incident. It was Chica, and that was always hinted at even in the Ultimate Custom Night. But why does Henry still feel that he was the first one that was affected by William and ultimately the Mimic? Now, that could be several things. It could be that he saw the events of what William was doing overall, as I've stated in my previous theory, but that makes him more of a coward, not really the first one afflicted by it. That just means he knew, but wasn't really the one to help do anything about it. I mean, yeah, it was a big source of shame for him. But the thing that I would have to believe was that, remember, when they first talk about the suits, they talk about wearing them as regular suits, being the update to it all. And from there, we do get this idea that he created the animatronics later on to be more of an animatronic suit. Almost as though he didn't want to rely on animatronics to begin with, for some odd reason. Because naturally, you would think the animatronics came first, then the spring-lock suits happened. But it wasn't in that order. It was the spring-lock suits first, then the animatronics came later on. An odd take on it, right? Unless there was an incident that happened. And that being, if all of you know, most of the circus animatronics have been feminine in nature. From Baby to the puppet, even to Ballora. They have been. So, could it be that the first clown, the first person to dress like a clown, the first one to take the picture was Henry's wife? Because throughout the story we do know about the kids of Henry and William. And with William, we kind of get the idea that his wife left him. But the one character that still remained a question, even through everything, is that Henry had a daughter that was a victim of William. That is true. But we don't know anything about his wife, do we? And even in the movie, we get this idea that the wife left, or something happened to her. Something that apparently affected the dad very greatly. So in this timeline, it is suggesting maybe she wasn't just a viewer in all this, maybe she was a participant. I'm not saying she was helping William or anything like that, but she was part of the act. She was part of William and Henry's show in a certain way. And maybe she was the original clown in this series. Maybe that's why he made it, or has such a close relation to the idea of a circus, making the clown, the puppet, be the protector of Charlie, their daughter, because in his eyes, the puppet, the clown, or whatever you would like to call it, is his wife in a certain way. That will explain the identity of Ballora, while William Afton shifted it to look like more of his wife. In a certain way, it makes thematic sense, but then again, it's just speculation. And if that's the story we're going with, it could be suggested that maybe the Mimic was mimicking her for a period of time, wanted to be the third member of Henry and Michael's own show, and he saw her as being in the way, and ultimately took her life at the very last minute, and tried to be the clown that they designed him to be. Because you could say that Henry was testing the idea of animatronics in AI, an attempt to make their jobs easier, or his job, so he can go on and create the animatronics he wanted to, or the suits that he wanted to overall. And to help kind of support that idea, we go back to the books. And that being the book, The Puppet Carver. Now that is part of the 9th Fazbear Frights book. And that has a lot of similarities to Henry himself. Where a businessman was feeling exhausted because his pizza place or his food chain was failing to begin with. And there is the creators or the workers of the place trying to help build animatronics that would help him along the way. And we do get Sage, who is this novelist telling her story or his story about an animatronic who came to life, only knew how to smell, touch, and see, but wanted emotions, and ended up getting emotions, but liking them in a darker, twisted way. That could be the mimic in the story sense, in a weird way. And at the end of the story, we do know that the fixer, its creator, kind of giving him a shock to life, ending with this fixer having his newborn baby in his arms while watching this creation of his in a way. If I got that wrong, please leave it down in the comment section. And then that's when we're introduced to Fazgoo, which is not a great idea, but we could definitely see it coming in this kind of series. And we do get this idea of kind of the business owner neglecting its family, realizing the mistakes that he's made because he's been hunted by this Fazgoo that's been trying to look like either an animatronic or a person and kind of take his place, and pretty much apologizes to all his employees and brings them all back. Now, it's a weird and loose interpretation of the story, but you can definitely tell that certain elements of that could be the Mimic's origin story, of something giving him life and then having this idea that they took it away, or that they gave him the ability to want emotion and not give it to him. He wants to be a person. He wants to live as a human in a certain way. And we do get that sense here in the game, after all, where he's trying to live as the dad, learn what the dad's like, and even try to learn from the boy in this Oswald in a way that makes him more interested than anything else. Because Springtrap is not there the whole time monitoring Oswald. He's doing what the dad's doing, going to work, staying home, eating, doing stuff like that, and then going back to the pizzaplex later on, or to the pizza place later on in the night. So it's a weird take, but it kind of fits in a darker sense. Now, do I say that all the stories in the anthology series are going to be involved in the main canon? No, but I will say that the Stitch Wraith, the To Be Beautiful, Into the Pit, and maybe even the Wood Carver have to be at least semblances making sense throughout the whole story. Because if we watch the side story of the Stitch Wraith, it does feel like it's the Mimic storyline of going place to place, looking for objects to keep him running, keep him going, and then the stories depict what he was doing during the day, and that is taking people, taking children, or even just tricking them into taking their identity, and surviving for as little as he could along the way. Even going to pizza places and enacting as William Afton was before, becoming something that he knew, something he saw, and that was one of his creators doing the terrible acts of the Fazbear Entertainment. So it makes sense that he would be reenacting what William Afton would be doing, not really knowing why or how, but knowing that that is just what he did, so he's naturally going to mimic it to begin with. And that would make sense for a lot of different victims along the way, because we always ask, how many victims does William Afton have? For a total, we know he may have 10, but that doesn't make sense overall because we don't know exactly when or where these are happening. But now that we think that there might be 2 William Aftons out there, the one that is in the main canon storyline, and the Mimic that might be just mimicking him, it could put things into an easier perspective, and at the same time making the story a lot more complicated than it actually needs to be. But then again, that just means it's a Five Nights at Freddy's storyline overall, isn't it? Now, the idea is that this is all happening through the perspective of the Mimic makes sense, because everything is as it was in the main canon, just twisted, darker. Like I said, he can copy William Afton, but he's not William Afton. He doesn't know the craft or what he does or why he does it. All he knows is he kidnaps them and does whatever he does. In this case, he's kidnapping them so that he can understand them in a certain way, just in a way that makes sense to him. Another thing we see is the different arcade machines, along with different views of the characters. We do know that Lefty turned to Hefty. That doesn't make sense, unless that means that they made extra minigames about him along the way, but I don't see them changing Lefty like that, or Helpy, if you would. As for one thing I did want to note, though, is that in the To Be Beautiful minigame, we do see Baby do what she did in the book, and that was put together the girl and take her place ultimately. But the one thing we didn't know was that she did it to two other kids. It was always hinted that maybe she wasn't the first victim, but even in the book, we never really got the idea that she was doing it to multiple people. Now, right there is already changing up the story a lot. So, does that make any sense that the baby in that storyline was probably the mimic, and this is his way of confirming that yes, it was him, and he was tricking people all this time. It's just that now he's being more aggressive with his tactics. I don't know, but that's something to think about at least. At least I like to think so. And also, if he is the mimic, what does that mean for the true ending? It means Oswald got away, his dad was saved, and that everything happened happily ever after. But the one thing that I do want to know is Jeff okay? We do know that Jeff is one of the lesser endings we get, but at the end of the true ending, we do see that the pizza place that Jeff was running suddenly became very popular and successful. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video today. I didn't really expect to do a video today, but I saw it that people were talking about it, and I just want to throw my 2 cents out there for the overall story. A lot of this is speculation, but I do feel that there is evidence to back it. And yeah, if you have opinions on this, or if you think I'm wrong, please just leave it down in the comment section. I really like to hear people's opinions about this. Thanks again for watching, and please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. See you later.